And then you mentioned about lime availability. So obviously, whatever quantity you put, whatever's in there is not 100% of what you require. So we're talking about 94%, 95% there in terms of what, or you mentioned 94 to 96% in terms of lime availability. So it means there are some impurities which you don't necessarily need or require for the process. And so at what point, and how do you determine that in this case I do need a grit removal process or equipment? How do you go about determining that?
Yeah. Okay. Well, just so grit, as in lime. So you know, when you say I'm buying lime, lime by chemical definition, as we know, is calcium oxide. So you're not when you buy a ton of lime from a supplier, it's in most cases it's unlikely to be 100% calcium oxide. You know, what we call lime, especially here in South Africa, we're not blessed with great qualities of a metallurgical grade limestone. Our limestone, as quarried here, is typically about 96%, 97% calcium carbonate, and the rest is you know, silica, a little bit of alumina, about a 8.8% Mn2O3, which gives our South African lime the sort of buff color rather than the white cliffs of Dover, which limestone, pure limestone, is white. So here we have about a 0.6.8% Mn2O3. So those constituents, together with any unburnt limestone, because you start off with a lump of calcium carbonate, and if that is in a rotary kiln, typically 50 millimeters, the lime that results out of that, after losing 40%, 44% of mass by virtue of losing the CO2 out of it, that lime will contain the grit that I mentioned, the acid insolubles, the Mn2O3s and things like that, plus a small core in the center of each lump that is unburnt calcium carbonate, and that is also counted as grit. So typically we have 4 to 6% grit in South African lime. And now moving to the impact of that on slaking. Now, if you're slaking big lumps of lime, you can expect to, if you're slaking 20 millimeters pieces of lime, you can expect to have 20 millimeter pieces of silica or other pieces of grit. Of course, if you're using a ground lime, something like a ground unslaked lime, typically minus 2.35 millimeters, or a fine unslaked lime, as we call it in our South African industry, we produce a minus 45 micron fine unslaked lime. Now, the grit is obviously just ground up to that size. So, and I think, Carsten, you also mentioned it. You alluded to this earlier. You know, if you're slaking big particles, you'll have big particles of grit. So you don't want those things in your system. If you're using extremely fine lime to slake, the minus 45 micron, those impurities will stay in suspension, and you won't need that reticulation to take the grit out. So the long answer to Prince's question, what determines the sort of grit? And I think it's the percentage of grit in your unslaked lime coming in. And remember, that is something that you would have determined with your supplier, and how well he burns his lime, and the quality of the limestone that he uses to burn. And secondly, the fineness of that lime, because you can get round a host of evils by milling the stuff extremely fine before you slake it.
Simon, thank you very much. I think, Carsten, I would like you to add on this, but before I give you the opportunities, I just want to I think what's important to highlight from my side is we've discussed in terms of just the reactivity of lime. I mean, what are the important factors? I mean, so if I can just summarize based on what I've gathered from this discussion, good quality water. I mean, you've got a good quality lime. In terms of I think the other key challenges, also what I'm seeing on the polls here, the lime build up. I think it's a very good selection of the equipment, making sure that you keep the line moving. I think from what I mean, if you just dump lime on water on the tank and leave it there without any agitation, it's bound to settle. Then you're going to end up with problems. I think keeping it moving at the right speed. I think those are the key factors. So I just wanted to highlight on that part before Kasna give you opportunity to add on what Simon was saying earlier related to the grid